G'day and welcome to Stay at Home Time with Robin and African Payment Solutions. There's been a very interesting writing by Yuval Noah Harari, which I couldn't actually put in better words myself. So I'm going to read you a passage, just to have a brief comment on, and he's talking mainly about surveillance and how the amount of power under this kind of situation is given to governments. But I think it has an amazing amount of relevance for us in business. So as e-commerce, as payments industry, that's where we live. I can see some very useful insights as a result of that. So I'm going to read it to you. This storm shall pass, but the choices we make now could change our lives for years to come. Humankind is now facing a global crisis, perhaps the biggest crisis of our generation. The decisions people and governments take in the next few weeks will probably shape the world for years to come. They will shape not just our healthcare systems, but our economy, politics, and culture. We must act quickly and decisively. We should also take into account the long-term consequences of our actions. When choosing between alternatives, we should ask ourselves not only how to overcome the immediate threat, but also what kind of world we will inhabit once the storm passes. Yes, the storm will pass. Humankind will survive. Most of us will still be alive. But we will inhabit a different world. Many short-term emergency measures will become a fixture of life. That is the nature of emergencies. They fast-forward historical processes. Decisions that in normal times could take years of deliberation are passed in a matter of hours. Immature and even dangerous technologies are pressed into service because the risks of doing nothing are bigger. Entire countries serve as guinea pigs in large-scale social experiments. What happens when everybody works from home and communicates only at a distance? What happens when entire schools and universities go online? In normal times, governments, business, and educational boards would never agree to conduct such experiments. But these aren't normal times. This was from an article by Yuval Noah Harari in the Financial Times. It's such an eloquent and interesting perspective by Yuval. And he carries on to talk about the pros and cons and implications for the world of state surveillance and control under the pretense of a lockdown. But for me, I'm more interested in how this pivot in the direction of the world and the increase of power in the hands of government could affect finance and online payments. In fact, just in terms of how this disruption and how are we going to see it coming out the other end. I listened to a very interesting Zoom webinar this morning with Nick Small, who's of Apis Private Equity, who are probably the biggest investors in kind of payments, acquiring and related industries across Africa, which was really insightful. And you were saying the immediate need is liquidity. How do you ensure liquidity? How do you negotiate with your staff to say, to get through this? What can we do from a salary perspective? Then from a supplier perspective, is there credit you can get there? Talk to your investors in terms of making sure you have enough dosh to get through this. So liquidity is the first, and any unnecessary or out there projects that you've been embarking on, this is not the time for that. It's to cut back to the basics and make sure that the business model is profitable or getting to profit and a positive cash flow as fast as humanly possible. And then, obviously, the next thing is to look at, okay, now we have enough dosh to get through the next 3 months. Let's work on a strategy. Who's going to be left after this? Who are my customers going to be after this? Are the goods and services that I'm supplying going to be relevant and necessary? How long is it going to be before they become relevant and necessary again? So it's to apply our minds to what our business could look like, how we can prosper and survive in the next phase in a post-COVID situation, which requires a fair bit of speculation, but a lot of guesstimation as to where the market will be and how we could effectively serve it. So I hope that was interesting and thought-provoking for you today. Thank you for listening. And if you're looking for payment across Africa at the checkout, get hold of us. Cards, mobile money, Kenya, Nigeria, South Africa, predominantly. We'll get you paid. Go to africanpaymentsolutions.com and send us an inquiry, and we'll be only too happy to help you. Thank you. Have an awesome day. We'll chat again tomorrow.